Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and it's time to look at the props for Week 8 in the NFL. No buys. Everybody's playing. How hard they're playing, well, that's something we could talk about, but certainly some matchups, some returns, too. On Thursday Night Football, we saw the returns of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. We're going to get Tua Tagovailoa back, and the return of Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback in the NFL. What a time to be alive. To help me break down all of the props for Week 8, the Welsh and the Undertaker himself, Mr. Andrew Erickson. Don't forget to download the Betting Pros app. Start betting smarter, not harder, and use the prop bet cheat sheet, because that's the way you can find the best lines with the best projections and the best places to bet them. Again, run to the Betting Pros app or go to bettingpros.com/props to check it out for yourself and start using the tools like the prop bet cheat sheet to make sure you get all your props in and make sure that you are maximizing all of the money you possibly can make in Week 8 in the NFL. Let's start here, gentlemen, at the top. A tough week last week for some of the props, but you guys are still over 500 for the year. So let's jump right in with 2 feet. Let's start with Bijan Robinson, Welsh, because you've got, as the kids like to say, all the feels.
I've got all the feels, and you know what? I'm harkening it back to last year, because what was the money play every week? Bijan. Let's get back to basics with Bijan. Yes, that's going to get us going here. It's a nice low-ish rushing yard total prop this week at 62.5. Projections across the board are over. I believe the BP and PFF, just doing as a cross-reference, are both over 70. The Bucks, they're averaging 92 yards against, which isn't too crazy, but it's on just 17 carries, which is an over 5-yard per carry mark. So you can run on this team. Just teams really haven't been, because they've had some efficient offense, maybe playing catch up. Not this week. Bijan, he has hit this number 2 straight weeks and 4 total for the year. And coming back to those yards average, he's averaging 4.7 yards on the ground, but had 15 or more carries over the last 2 weeks. So you give me what they give up, what he's getting, and the higher usage as far as carries go. I like this a lot. Plus, just if you take a look at like the Bucks in general, if they are going to struggle more on offense and they are going to be playing a little bit from behind, and the Falcons are going to be able to manage this more, it's even better for Bijan to break a big run, get over that 15 carry marker, and smash this. We're back into Bijan betting season. That's how I'm starting off the first one.
One of the things I like in that game too is Rashad White, the over 3.5 receptions. Everybody knows I don't like betting receptions typically unless I'm getting plus money on it. You can get plus 130 on this. And with all those injuries to the wide receiver core, Rachaad White's going to work a lot more in that receiving game. I can't believe that the number is that low and you're getting plus money on it. So get in on that game while the getting's good. Bo Nix this week is a top 15 fantasy quarterback. Did you know that? According to the expert consensus rankings, at least on Fantasy Pros. But what does that mean on the betting side of things, Andrew Erickson, when it comes to Bo Nix?
Yeah, as I was breaking down this Broncos-Panthers game, which in the betting primer this week, I talked about potentially the worst game on the slate. Do I want to bet the spread? Do I want to bet the total? And you always say, Joe, when it comes to these types of games with Boggs, just bet the props, man. Just bet the props. And the prop that stood out to me the most was Bo Nix under 28.5 pass attempts, because if Sean Payton doesn't have to let Bo Nix throw, he won't let Bo Nix throw. So that's what I think is going to happen in this matchup. I think they're going to run the ball 30 times. You look at teams against the Carolina Panthers this year. No quarterback. 0 quarterbacks have hit their passing attempts projection against the Panthers. None of them. Only twice has a quarterback gone over 30 pass attempts, and it was Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins. Teams that feel much better about putting the ball in their quarterback's hands. Nix is under 28.5 pass attempts in 3 of his last 4 games at 27.5. And in the 2 games so far this year where the Broncos have been favored, he's 2-0 towards the under. So in games where the Broncos are supposed to win, they don't give the ball to Bo Nix that much. So I'm taking the under 20.5 pass attempts.
Friends don't let friends let Bo Nix throw the football too much. I think that's the right idea. That's the recipe, right? Play defense, run the football. Don't overexpose Bo Nix. That seems to be working for the Denver Broncos, at least for now.
Never go full Bo Nix, my friend.
No. I did that once in college, and, well, it wasn't pretty. Breece Hall is the next guy we're going to talk about as the Jets-Patriots play in the Belichick Bowl, so that should be fun here. Some big running performances this year on the Patriots. We've seen that a few times. I've already bet a bunch of Breece Hall stuff, but Welsh, when it comes to props for Breece Hall, what stands out the most for you?
On video, what are we doing? We are going with an under. I had to play this under this week because his rush attempt prop was up at 19.5. So the bet over 20. Of course, Breece could do it. They've been using Breece more, but Breece has not done it once this season. He has not had over 19, 18, I think is his tippy top of rush attempts on the year. He's actually, in fact, only had 20 rush attempts 4 times in his career. And they've got Braylon Allen now. So, I know why this prop went up there. 3 of the last 5 weeks against the Patriots, you've had running backs go over 30 rush attempts. So there's a lot of running going on. But they like to get Breece into that 22, 23 touch range, even in this, the new coaching staff. But there's so much done on the receiving side. So obviously, if the Jets were to completely start blowing this out, it could lead to more rush attempts from Breece Hall. But it's going to get Braylon Allen more involved. And I think Braylon Allen's a guy they're going to continue. They'll just put, right through the tackles and the guards. They're going to let that open field stuff with Breece Hall happen. He's going to get lots of touches. He's gotten up to 18. We're not getting to 20. So I am slamming an under. Didn't do it last week. I'm playing my best Andrew Erickson for Halloween here. I am going with under rush attempts for Breece Hall at 19.5. Boom.
Okay. I've bet the over on the 74.5 with Breece Hall, and I paired it with the touchdown, so I can get into plus money there, because obviously the juice is pretty strong on both of them. So if you do that, you can get almost 2-1. So, I mean, if you think Breece Hall is going to have a good day, and I do against the Patriots, it's hard to think he's not going to get close to that 85-90 range and probably coming away with a tutty at some point. So that pairing is a nice little duo bet. Andrew Erickson, let's go to you for your second prop of the day. And let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles in a matchup this week. And what receiver do you have your eye on?
I'm going right back to DeVonta Smith. I know I talked about him last week as an over on his receiving yards, and he totally bombed. I got more receiving yards than DeVonta Smith last week because he was in the negatives. Because
and Tyreek Hill.
it was absolutely horrible. So, but I'm going right back to it because I don't think my process was wrong going after DeVonta Smith. It just happened to be a very outlier game from the Eagles passing game where they attempted 14 passes. Jalen Hurts, that was the lowest amount of passes he's ever attempted in a game since 2021. They're not going to be able to just attempt 14 passes against the Cincinnati Bengals. There's no way that's happening. So I'm going right back to Smith. Historically, when Dallas Goedert has missed time, he always goes over 55.5 receiving yards. Before last week, he went over 55.5 receiving yards in every single game this season. He traditionally always thrives when guys miss time. I don't expect Dallas Goedert to play in this matchup. You look at the Bengals defense. No defense has faced more targets to number 2 wide receivers than the Cincinnati Bengals this season. So I'm buying the dip aggressively on DeVonta Smith. He's going to have a big game.
All right. Aggressively buying the dip on DeVonta Smith. Welsh, let's go to you for one of Andrew Erickson's favorite things, Brian Thomas Jr. Now, look, the Jags were coming off an actual win where the offense looked decent. Travis Etienne looking like a game-time decision. So not looking good for him, which means a lot of Tank Bigsby, but also an opportunity where, you could be in a thing where Jordan Love and Mr. Lawrence are going to have to be throwing the ball a lot, going back and forth with each other, potentially anyway. So what does that mean for Brian Thomas Jr. this week?
Yeah, I mean, if you really think that this game is going to be hyper competitive, we can play that narrative. I also think it could, not be hyper competitive, and that still works very well for the prop that I want in Brian Thomas over receptions at 4.5 so far. So, yeah, and my point is like, if they're going back and forth, great. But even if the Packers are blowing them out, that means the Jaguars are going to be playing from behind. And they're going to be throwing to whom? Brian Thomas. This is the play that they have been going for multiple weeks. He has hit this prop. He has gone over 4.5 receptions in 4 of the last 5 weeks. We're seeing Kirk getting phased out of this offense. Ingram, obviously, has been solid in his return and is going to get his lion's share. But if you also take Etienne out of there, who is, their primary third down, whatever role it ends up being, we know Bigsby will not play on third downs. So that receiving role from Etienne, that's more receptions out. But either way, it's big plays for Brian Thomas. They are continuously getting those targets in. And we've got 4 of 5 weeks where this is hit. This is a pretty low-ish number against a team that they are going to be playing from behind. I feel pretty certain that they are not going to be holding big major leads on the Green Bay Packers. So there's going to have to be a lot of throwing. It's not going to be 26 carries for Tank Bigsby. This is going to be a Brian Thomas game. 4.5 receptions is nice, and I'm taking it.
Well, Andrew Erickson loves the sound of that, that's for sure. I mentioned Rashad White earlier in the show. Andrew Erickson, you're with me on this, and maybe you're smarter because you're just betting the total rushing yards. But again, This is a guy that does work a lot in the passing game. Bucky Irving also have that toe injury, so we could see a lot of Rashad White in this game, and he looked really sharp to me. By far the best he's looked all year. He's actually breaking tackles, so let's get to your take on Rashad White for week 8.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on the rushing yards for Rachaad White, over 43.5. The last 3 weeks, Rachaad White has been efficient. It's absolutely crazy. Sean Alexander was right. Apparently, Rachaad White does look pretty good. So 5.4 yards per carry over the last 3 weeks. He hit a season high in rushing yards against the same Falcons defense he's playing this week. In week 5, he had 72 rushing yards. Every running back the Falcons have faced this year has gone over their rushing yard prop, hitting at least 70 rushing yards. So with no Bucky Irving, no wide receivers left, yes, let's establish the run. Let's feed Rachaad White, as weird as that sounds. He's been much better, and the matchup is there for the taking for him. So I think I like the rushing. This is a week to bet Rachaad White overs. The receptions, the rushing. I like White a lot. I think they're going to have to lean on him, just given all the injuries in the backfield and to the wide receivers.
All right, we still got our touchdown calls to go. We got a couple more props left for you. So let's start with JSN, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. No, DK Metcalf's health is in question. But the one thing that's not in question, Welsh, has been Geno Smith slinging the ball all over the place, no matter who's out there playing wide receivers. So what does the injury to DK mean this week potentially for the props when it comes to JSN?
It's going to lead to a lot more first read. I talked about that off of that injury. DK Metcalf dominated in the first read for Seattle, but now you're going to take that out. JSN was around a 20% first read. Tyler Lockett was 18%. Now you take 25% off. It's going to lead to both Lockett and JSN getting more targets. The thing that's always kind of held back, and you could look at receptions for JSN, because he had that one game where it was like 8 catches for 51 yards, just Wan'Dale Robinson-like performances. But when we go and look at the receiving yards, it's 51.5. Projections are wildly over this. Cross-referencing, PFF, 67 receiving yards for him. So you're talking about around a 16-yard swing on him. He has hit this marker 2 of the last 3 weeks. And 2 wide receivers on the opposing team's versus have hit this number. So 2 each in 2 games. He's the volume play. And I'll tell you, this was one of those, in the next prop I'm going to do as well. These were 2 where it was like, I almost don't care what the stats are saying. Like, give me a semi-juicy number and we're going to jump on it because of volume. JSN is going to have to step up. They're going to get him the ball more. He's a volume target monster. And yes, the Wan'Dale scare is there as far as target receptions to yards, but it's under 55-60, which I think was a key marker. So JSN with that heavy pass offense, receiving yards, slamming it. Trying to learn when I can, because I love receiving, like reception props. But Joe, you are very, very big about your receiving yards over the receptions.
Always the yards, because you give yourself more opportunity, right? Just a percentage, right? And you'll get that one big play. You can get most of it or even all of it, depending on that number. You know, you look at some of these numbers for Cedric Tillman this week and some other guys too, where they're very low. Some of those Tampa wide receivers, because the market just doesn't know what it's going to look like. You take advantage of those. You take advantage of those overs, and hopefully you hit on 1 or 2 of them.
Plus 135 for Tillman receptions. By the way, this week I was tempted.
It's when you get the plus money. Like I said, on Rachaad White, I think the 3.5 is ridiculous. I don't think there's any way he doesn't have 5 or 6 catches in that game, just from based on the need and based on what we've seen previously when those 2 teams match up. That there's going to be a back and forth most likely of these 2 teams. And I think when you get plus money and a good number, that's when everything comes together for those receptions. And you tend to get it more with running backs in those spots than you do with wide receivers most of the time.
Joe,
go ahead.
I just wanted to, so I know that we've talked a lot about receptions and receiving yards. I think it's a really fascinating conversation, because even before the Thursday night game, Mike Mayer was trying to figure out, all right, what's the pick of the day? And he's like, all right, do we go with Jefferson receptions or Jefferson receiving yards? And again, it didn't end up mattering because he went over everything. But I was on the yard side. I said, look, Jefferson's an explosive playmaker. And I think that in the yardage, I think had a bigger payout. So that's why I said, let's go with the yards. And again, it didn't end up mattering. And then I think it's interesting because of the 2 picks that Welsh brought up here with Brian Thomas and JSN. I guess for me, Brian Thomas is an explosive playmaker. So why do the receptions and the receiving yards? And then with JSN, it's this guy, all he does is catch dump off passes, really, and short underneath passes.
So you want my inverse of both of my bets?
Well, no. I guess for me, are we trying to lean towards what's more likely to hit or what's more likely to give us the best payout? Like what, Joe? It seems like you lean towards
a great question.
Give me the most money for being right.
I see what Erickson's saying. It's a payout versus and he's saying you're leaning more to maybe the bigger payout than maybe at line of success, even if you're juicing it a little bit.
I think it's a very individual thing too. It has to do with the certain players. Like you bring up Ryan Thomas, right? Explosive player. I tend to just go and ignore the receptions because my confidence in the Jaguars' consistency of offense is not great, right? So it's circumstance, it's player, it's the prop for the week, it's whatever it's juiced at or plus money at. Like I think there's so many variables in it, but I think you have to take them all into account. And more often than not, the receiving yards I always find to be the more profitable. And look, the guys like Justin Jefferson, the yard you always take because he's such a great player. You take that, he can have 6 catches for 120 yards. That's Justin Jefferson. Like, yes, he's big plays. And then the game is done. It's over typically, and you stash it away now. It wasn't done yesterday, but again, certain things do happen in the game of football. When we are talking about putting together some unders, though, one of my biggest fades, I was putting together the TV show for Sunday for Sports Grid, and Andrew, the one thing that I wrote for the busts of week 8, I said Raiders running backs against the Kansas City Chiefs. Game script's not going their way. Chiefs really good against the run typically this year. Defense playing really well, and it looks like you are in that same mindset as I am this week.
Yep, going under on Alexander Mattison, even though he has basically been the engine to what's ever left of my flex team in fantasy football after I picked him up, because Mattison's been good, filling in as the RB1, but I don't think that's going to continue this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs defense allowing the 4th fewest rushing yards per game to running backs. Only one running back they have faced this season has surpassed their rushing yards total. So yeah, it's at 40 rushing yards, 40 and a half rushing yards for Alexander Mattison, but I just have no faith that this Raiders offense is going to be able to run the ball. I think they cover, but I don't think they run the ball with Alexander Mattison. So even though he went over last week, 92 yards and 23 carries, maybe we see more of a split with Zamir White getting back and healthy. So I'm going to take the under on a running back that I'm in an offense that I'm not really excited about.
All right. One more from each of the guys here. A lot of people trying to make money, as I said earlier, on the Jalen McMillan, certainly Shepard. Where do the Bucs go from here? But Welsh, you have a different take. You're not going wide receiver at all. You're not going Rashad White on this one. So where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're fun, like if you want to play on those, but I'm going to go with Cade Otton, and I am going to go to receptions on this. 10 targets last week through that injury, over 5 catches in 3 of his last 5 weeks. The marker this week is 4.5 over receptions. 6 of 8 games tight ends have gone over 5 receptions against Atlanta, as well as 2 straight weeks. So we know there's no Godwin, we know there's no Evans, and we know they're going to have to move that offense. We've talked about it kind of at nauseum. You guys both think Rachaad White's going to get a heavy dose. I don't necessarily disagree with that. There's a big debate of Shepard versus McMillan, but what wasn't a debate last week was Cade Otton is getting littered with targets. Baker Mayfield loves throwing him the ball, and not that the Atlanta Falcons are just some easy giveaway for any type of tight end, but like it's there. Just teams are not throwing against. If you go and look at the matchups, there's a lot of not good tight end matchup teams that they've played. I think Baker Mayfield is going to go 8+ targets on Cade Otton this week. So I love the reception. You can go and play your yards if you want to do that. Sometimes receptions, they're just a smart play. And I think this is a situation with that where Baker is going to look to his 2 safety nets in this game, if we're really truly being honest, are Rashad White and Cade Otton. Rashad White is going to be that safety play when he goes first read and, McMillan is covered. And then if they're going to go play down the middle on a second read, Cade Otton is going to get those massive amounts of targets. So I love the Cade Otton. Cade Otton and Jaxon Smith-Njigba, due to all of the injuries, were 2 that I was ready to just blind jump into for props this week. And that is my final on the top 5.
He's gone over this in 3 of his last 5 games. And he went over it last week. He's just on the field a lot too. So you're giving yourself a lot of opportunities, which, some tight ends aren't on the field as much as Cade Otton is. So the availability of him being on the field certainly gives you a shot at this one for sure. Erickson, let's wrap up the props for the week before we head to the touchdown market. And let's talk about a quarterback situation. Justin Herbert is going to be playing the New Orleans Saints. The Saints most likely without Derek Carr again. So what does that mean for Justin Herbert, who this week in terms of fantasy productivity, he's not getting the kindest rank right now. I'm looking at it. He's ranked outside the top 25 QBs. Say it ain't so, Erickson.
I mean, I got him like QB 22, so I'm way ahead of the market on Justin Herbert. Now, I get because it's not going to be an exciting game, not a lot of back and forth with the Saints probably starting Spencer Rattler. So but when you look at this passing prop for Justin Herbert, it's so low. 198.5 passing yards. And we look at the Chargers since their bye week, they're plus 7% pass rate over expectation compared to negative 11% weeks 1 through 5. So they are throwing more. We saw Justin Herbert throw for nearly 350 yards on Monday Night Football to guys I didn't even know were on the Chargers. Jalen Reagor, I didn't even know he was a Charger. And yet we have Herbert dropping back to throw a little bit more, as I think they're trying to balance out the run with the pass. Now, yeah, I do expect them to still run the ball a decent amount against New Orleans Saints, but the Saints are coming off extra rest, so maybe their defense will finally look to try to tackle a ball carrier. So maybe this game is a little bit closer. They have to throw a little bit more. There's only 2 quarterbacks that haven't passed for at least 200 yards against the Saints. One of them was Bryce Young, and the other was Bo Nix. So for me, it's just a very low bar to pass, pun intended, for Justin Herbert to get at least 200 passing yards here. I mean, it's Justin Herbert we're talking about. This isn't maybe this quarterback hits this number. He's an elite quarterback. He's got a great arm. I think he can throw for 200 yards against the Saints.
All right, let's get to the touchdown calls for the week here. And don't forget the touchdown score report at bettingpros.com/touchdown is available if you're looking for an edge in your touchdown betting. The touchdown score report compares anytime touchdown stats to prop bet odds and projections to help identify the best anytime touchdown bets you can make. So head to bettingpros.com/touchdown for the latest touchdown prop analysis today. Just download the BP app wherever you get your apps. All right, Welsh, give me 2 guys scoring touchdowns in week 8.
We are targeting wide receivers. Number 1 up, DJ Moore. What a great matchup. Team gives up the most receiving touchdowns against in Washington. Caleb Williams is a top 6, 7 quarterback in fantasy. DJ Moore is going to be one of the beneficiaries of that. Not just Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, as I mentioned in week 1, like he's going to be a red zone guy. DJ Moore is going to break a big one, and you're almost getting 2-1 on his money. So I love that one. And going to go against my San Francisco 49ers. CeeDee Lamb is plus money. I mean, I know wide receivers don't usually get negative minus money for, in anytime touchdowns. That's, Derrick Henry is like minus 295 this week. That's a running back's job. But the 49ers secondary is bad. It's really bad. They get toasted. They get toasted for big plays. They get toasted by number ones. And you're going to tell me that CeeDee Lamb is going to get plus money against this banged up 49ers defense and an offense that can't stay on the field? Absolutely slamming CeeDee Lamb at plus 110. So Lamb and Moore are my 2 touchdown calls.
All right, so Lamb and Moore for the Welsh. I like Lamb to score because you know me, I'm in on the Cowboys this week. How about them Cowboys? Let's go. Let's see if I know you hate it, Welsh, but
no, just also that's just like don't do it.
I know. Just feels like the end is nigh for the 49ers. The bye can't come soon enough. Erickson, give me 2 guys and 2 touchdowns in week 8.
Anthony Richardson. We're all ready to write him off in fantasy, as we should, and he's inevitably going to score 2 rushing touchdowns because this is just what mobile quarterbacks do. The last 2 times he's faced the Texans, he scored at least 1 rushing touchdown. So he finds the end zone against Houston for some reason. So I'm going Anthony Richardson plus 190 to score a rushing touchdown. He's got Jonathan Taylor back, running the QB option at the goal line. It's going to be frustrating because he's going to be on your fantasy bench most likely. And then my other guy, long shot, Tyler Boyd, plus 310. There's no DeAndre Hopkins. Calvin Ridley, I don't know what he's doing on the field, but Tyler Boyd showed out last week, caught 5 balls from Mason Rudolph. You look at the Lions, they are the number 1 defense in terms of most fantasy points allowed to slot receivers. So that includes yards, targets, touchdowns. So if the Titans get anywhere near the end zone, I think Tyler Boyd's going to score. So
that could be
that's
a big
my
if.
bet, plus 310.
But I like it. I like where head's at. And I love the Richardson one. I really do because, those games between those 2 teams tend to get really hyper competitive. And those are the kind of games that you want Richardson out there in space making plays. And I could see this one for sure. Plus 192 is a great number on that one. All right, for me, the 2 guys that get touchdowns and find the end zone in week 8, Tucker Kraft. It's a good matchup here. The Jacksonville Jaguars are terrible against tight ends, giving up a lot of fantasy points to them this year. You're getting plus 195 on Tucker Kraft, too. Not to mention wide receiver injuries everywhere for them, right? Jaden Reed's not really healthy. Christian Watson's never healthy, it feels like. Wicks, everybody's banged up right now. Romeo Dobbs is like the only guy who's healthy. So give me Tucker Kraft in there, plus 195. And my boy was back last week, and he already got a touchdown. We're going to do it again. I think the Browns will show up, get excited for this game, at least for temporary circumstances against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know how long it lasts, but I feel like they are in a spot. They don't have to worry about Watson anymore. Winston's here now. Cooper's gone too. It's just kind of like, all right, guys, just go out there and just have some fun. And when you're having fun, you're handing the football to Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb to score a touchdown. I love it this week, getting plus 130 on that one. So give me Chubb, give me Kraft. That's what I want for week 8 in the NFL. You call your touchdowns, though. Drop your comments below. Who's scoring a touchdown in week 8? I want to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel of Betting Pros. And of course, don't forget to ring that bell till it goes ding for notifications. Download the BettingPros app today. And again, that's about all we can do. Use the prop bet cheat sheet too. Use the tools. They're here to help you. And so are we. So we hope everyone has a great week 8. Enjoy the games. Enjoy being profitable. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh and the Undertaker, Andrew Erickson, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.